said that there are no words adequate to reflect the helplessness and despair and the pain of so many people, thousands of Australians, over the last few months at witnessing the fall of Afghanistan and the return of the Taliban. I think all Australians at some level, particularly those with a connection to Afghanistan, have been horrified at witnessing what has unfolded. But most especially those who served for 20 years or more with our Defence Forces, who've grown to know and love the country and maintain those connections back here in Australia, but especially, above all, for Afghan Australians worried about their family and friends and seeing the return of this medieval-style cult, the Taliban. It's an affront to all civilised people. No respect for human rights, no respect for women, a medieval outlook returning. It's been a horrific few months, and I know, representing so many thousands of Afghan Australians, talking to hundreds of people about the trauma and the despair of the phone calls to family, people telling me every day, calling 3 times a day, worried that it may be the last time they talk to their mother or their father or their children or their brothers or sisters or cousins. But I do want to call out the lethal negligence of the Morrison government in handling and responding to this crisis. The Prime Minister, witnessing events unfold, he said, well, he wishes it were different. The truth is, it should have been different, and it could have been different if the Prime Minister and the Liberal government had done their job. The Prime Minister was warned for years of the consequences of delaying the processing of the visas for the family of Australians and for the locally engaged staff, the interpreters, those who've worked with Australia and supported our efforts to build peace and a stable democracy for 20 years. These delays are a moral failure on the government's part and a policy failure. The common cry that I've heard from people is the worry for their families. The common despair is people's understanding that their families should have been safe here years ago in Australia if the government had only processed their visas. And the common factor is the government's tardiness and delays in not processing those visas that have sat in the Department of Home Affairs for years. And indeed, might I say, the citizenship of so many people who've been living in Australia for 5, 10 years or more, contributing, paying taxes, doing your part contributing to our community, saying you want to formalise your commitment to our country, but the government discriminates against you and will not process your citizenship or visa applications. Shame on the government. Nearly 8,000 people, husbands and wives and children of Australian citizens and permanent residents, have been stuck in Afghanistan, waiting for years for their visas. These are 8,000 people, future Australians, who should never have been in Kabul in the country when it fell to the Taliban, if the Prime Minister had not discriminated and had processed the visas. There are thousands more families and interpreters who should have been here, but the Prime Minister did not process those visas. We know now that there's still 2,200 people who were granted 449 visas by Australia during the evacuation, who are still stuck in Afghanistan with the clock ticking. Now, I use the word discriminatory, and I don't use that word lightly. The Liberal government's policies have been blatantly discriminatory. If you fall in love with someone from America or Western Europe and you apply for a partner visa, you get that visa on average in about 5 to 7 months. But if you fall in love with someone from Afghanistan, it takes on average 43 months or more for the Australian government to give you a visa. That's discrimination. That's an average too. We all know of people who've been waiting for 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 years to bring their family and children here to safety. We know the impact of Ministerial Direction 80. Now, this is not the kind of thing you normally talk about at a rally, Ministerial Direction 80, but I know that so many people from your community know exactly what that means. It means that if someone came 10 years ago to this country seeking refugee status by boat, then their partner visa processing is given the lowest priority. Hence, people are still waiting nearly 10 years on. The Minister says, well, you've just got to wait. If these are not exceptional circumstances when your families are living under the rule of the Taliban that deserve priority, then I don't know what is. And so Federal Labor will keep speaking up and keep pushing for faster processing so your families can come here to safety. At the very moment our nation should have been generous, it was a moment for national generosity, watching the fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban. The Prime Minister said, well, we'll bring 3,000 refugees. Australia's annual program, even after the Liberals' cuts, is 17,500. We brought 12,000 people from Syria, a country with whom, frankly, Australia does not have a strong connection. And yet for a country like Afghanistan, when we've welcomed people from Afghanistan in Australia since 1860, when the first Cameliers arrived in Melbourne, the country in which we fought our longest war, a country with such a vibrant and strong connection to Australia as we can see here, the Prime Minister and the Liberal Party said, well, 3,000 people. It's pathetic and it is an insult to us and to your community. And so I understand and applaud you on the calls for a more generous program. Labor stands with you on this. We've said consistently, this is a moment for national generosity and we will keep pushing this miserable government to do the right thing and to bring people to safety. Australia cannot, and we all know this, we cannot bring everyone who deserves protection, but we can at the very least support and prioritise the family members of Australians who've sought that refugee visa. People like the families of Hazaras here, who we know are going to be persecuted, but we also know if they come to safety in Australia, you will welcome them, we will help them settle in, and they will adapt to life in Australia well and quickly. They're good candidates for priority. Now we're going to have a bit of audience participation here. Of those 3,000, not enough, but of those first 3,000 that the Prime Minister said they're going to bring 3 months on, guess how many they've processed? Guess how many visas they've processed? Zero. Zero visas. There's no clarity still on the priorities, no clarity on the timelines, and no sense of urgency from this government that this crisis and this moment demands. And I call on the government to recognise reality, to grant people who've been living here in our community, and I know many people here in this situation, who've been found to be genuine refugees, who've been living for 10 years on temporary protection visas, to grant them permanent protection and to stop this fiction, this nonsense, that somehow it's ever going to be safe for people here in Dandenong or the rest of Australia to go back and live under the Taliban. If you're a genuine refugee in Australia, you should receive permanent protection to build your life here. That's a commitment Federal Labor makes, that if we are the next government of Australia, genuine refugees will receive permanent protection and you won't have to live on these awful temporary visas any longer. It is always too little too late with this Prime Minister. We saw the slow response and the catastrophic impact of his failures during the evacuation period. We saw it with the vaccines, we saw it with his failure to build safe quarantine, we saw it with the bushfires, we saw it with his failure to extend economic support to people and businesses quickly who needed it during the COVID crisis, and now we're seeing it with their failure to process even one refugee visa in the last 3 months for people who've applied. And so if we are given the great privilege, if Federal Labor forms the next government of Australia, I commit to you we will do better. We will grant permanent protection to people who are already here, and you'll see a significant increase in the number of people who we welcome in our refugee visa program. I stand with you, I'm proud to represent you, and I thank you for your advocacy in this cause.